15 years ago, Aya, a dazzling black model, vanished from the spotlight, abandoned by billionaire James Thornton when she carried his quadruplets. Raising David, Ethan, Luke, and Mason alone, she forged a life of love amid hardship. Now a chance article reunites James with his sons, their blue eyes hauntingly familiar. Secrets unravel, letters hidden, truths buried. As James seeks redemption, Ethan's resentment tests their fragile bond. Can Aya trust the man who left her? Will four boys call him Dad? A journey of forgiveness and family awaits, where wealth means nothing without love. The Chicago skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Aya Williams's penthouse, a dazzling backdrop to a life that felt, in this moment, like it was unraveling. Aya stood barefoot on the cool marble floor, her breath shallow, clutching a pregnancy test that bore two stark pink lines. At 24, she was the darling of the fashion world, a black model whose radiant smile and fierce runway presence had graced Vogue covers and Milan catwalks. Her deep brown skin glowed under the soft chandelier light, but her eyes, usually bright with ambition, were clouded with dread. She sank onto the velvet sofa, the test trembling in her hand. She was pregnant, with James Thornton's child. James. The name alone sent a shiver down her spine. He was her everything, her lover, her confidant, the white billionaire heir who'd swept her into a whirlwind romance 2 years ago. They'd met at a charity gala, his piercing blue eyes locking onto hers across a sea of tuxedos and sequins. He was charm incarnate, his easy laughter and sharp intellect disarming her guarded heart. Their love had been a secret kept from the tabloids, a private haven of late-night talks and stolen weekends in his lakeside estate. But now this tiny plastic stick threatened to shatter it all. Aya's fingers grazed her flat stomach, her mind racing. She wasn't ready to be a mother. Her career was soaring. Paris Fashion Week was next month, and she'd just signed with a top agency. Yet a flicker of joy sparked within her. A child with James, their child, could be a new chapter, a testament to their love. She imagined his face lighting up, his arms pulling her close, promising to build a future together. She reached for her phone, her heart pounding as she dialed his number. "James, we need to talk," she said when he answered, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Can you come over? It's important." His tone was distracted, clipped. "Aya, I'm in the middle of something. Can it wait?" "No, it can't." She swallowed hard. "Please." An hour later, James stood in her living room, his tailored suit slightly rumpled, his blonde hair tousled as if he'd run his hands through it a dozen times. The city lights cast shadows across his chiseled features, but his eyes were distant, already halfway out the door. Aya took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly to keep them from shaking. "I'm pregnant," she said, the words tumbling out. "I just found out." The silence that followed was deafening. James's face froze, his jaw tightening as if she'd struck him. He turned away, pacing toward the window, his reflection staring back at him in the glass. Aya waited, her heart hammering, expecting shock, then joy, then a plan. But when he finally spoke, his voice was cold, stripped of the warmth she'd come to crave. "Pregnant?" He turned to face her, his eyes narrowing. "Aya, you know what's at stake for me. My family's empire, billions of dollars, generations of legacy. I'm leaving for London next week to take over the European division. This changes nothing." Her breath caught, a sharp pain slicing through her chest. "Nothing? James, this is our child. Your child. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" He ran a hand over his face, his expression a mix of frustration and resolve. "I can't do this right now. The timing, it's all wrong. My father's watching every move I make. If I don't prove myself, I lose everything. The board, the inheritance, my future." Aya stepped closer, her voice trembling but fierce. "What about our future? You said you loved me. You said we'd face anything together. I do love you," he snapped, but his words felt hollow, like a line rehearsed for a different audience. "But it's too much. I can't be tied down, not now. Maybe in a few years, when things stabilize." "A few years?" Her laugh was bitter, cutting through the air. "You think I'll just wait, raising your child alone, While you chase your empire? He flinched but didn't back down. I'll send money. Whatever you need. But I can't stay, Aya. I'm sorry. The word sorry landed like a blade. She stared at him, the man she trusted with her heart, now a stranger unraveling her world. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Money, she whispered. That's your answer? It's all I can offer right now. He moved toward the door, pausing only to glance back, his expression unreadable. You'll be fine, Aya. You're strong. The door clicked shut behind him, and the silence swallowed her whole. Aya sank to the floor, the pregnancy test clattering against the marble. Strong. He'd called her strong, as if that excused his abandonment. She pressed her hands to her stomach, a fierce resolve igniting within her. She was strong, strong enough to protect the life growing inside her, strong enough to face this alone. Weeks later, at a dimly lit clinic, the ultrasound revealed not one heartbeat but four. Quadruplets. The technician's voice was a blur as Aya stared at the screen. Four tiny forms pulsing in rhythm. Her heart swelled with awe and terror. Four children, all hers, all James's. She tried to reach him, writing letters she poured her soul into, detailing her fears, her hopes, the miracle of their babies. She mailed them to his London office, each one a plea for him to return, to choose them. But no reply came. Not a word. The silence was its own betrayal. Aya made her choice. She canceled her Paris contract, turned down runway offers, and moved to a modest apartment in Chicago's South Side. The fashion world buzzed with rumors. Where had Aya Williams gone? But she didn't care. Her world had narrowed to the four lives she carried, the boys who would become her everything. She sold her designer wardrobe to pay for cribs, traded late-night parties for sleepless nights preparing for motherhood. 9 months later, in a hospital room bathed in dawn's light, Aya gave birth to David, Ethan, Luke, and Mason. They were perfect, tiny with her rich brown skin, and, to her shock, James's unmistakable blue eyes. Holding them, she felt a love so fierce it eclipsed her pain. I've got you, she whispered, kissing each forehead. We don't need him. She named them with purpose. David for strength, Ethan for resilience, Luke for light, and Mason for endurance. Alone, she navigated sleepless nights, diaper changes, and fevers. Her modeling days a distant memory. Her mother helped when she could, but Aya bore the weight of parenthood with a quiet ferocity. She worked odd jobs, receptionist, cashier, anything to keep food on the table. The letters to James stopped after the first year, her hope replaced by a steely determination to give her boys a life filled with love, even if it lacked a father. As she tucked her sons into bed each night, their blue eyes sparkling with dreams, Aya vowed they'd never know the sting of their father's rejection. She'd be enough. She had to be. But deep down, in the quiet moments when the city slept, a small part of her wondered if James ever thought of her, if he'd ever regret walking away. She pushed the thought aside, locking it away with the love she'd once felt for him. Her boys were her world now, and no amount of wealth or regret could change the past. The Chicago morning was crisp, the city humming with its relentless pulse as James Thornton leaned back in the leather chair of his corner office. At 39, he was the picture of success. A billionaire who'd tripled his family's real estate empire, his name etched in gold on skyscrapers from London to Dubai. His penthouse office, perched 50 stories above the Loop, was a shrine to his triumphs. Polished mahogany, modern art, and a view that screamed power. Yet as he sipped his espresso, the bitterness lingered longer than it should have. The victories, the private jets, the gala invitations, they all felt hollow, like a song played in an empty theater. James scrolled through his tablet, skimming emails from investors and board members. His phone buzzed with notifications, but he ignored them, his mind drifting to a restlessness he couldn't name. 15 years had passed since he'd left Chicago for London, since he'd walked away from Aya Williams and the life they might have had. Her face, those luminous brown eyes, that radiant smile, flashed in his memory, unbidden. He'd buried those thoughts long ago, convincing himself she'd moved on, that his choice had been the right one. But the emptiness gnawed at him, a quiet ache that no deal or dollar could fill. A news alert pinged on his tablet, a local story he'd normally swipe away. The headline caught his eye. Single mother of quadruplets honored at Unity Community Center for Youth Mentorship. His finger hovered, something tugging at his gut. He tapped the article, and the world tilted. There, in vivid color, was Aya, older, her hair now in soft curls framing her face, but unmistakably her. She stood in a community center courtyard, surrounded by four teenage boys, tall, broad-shouldered, their dark skin glowing under the sun. But it was their eyes that stopped his heart. Piercing blue like his own stared out from faces that mirrored his youth. James's breath caught, the espresso cup clattering to the desk. Quadruplets. David, Ethan, Luke, and Mason, the caption read. His mind raced, calculating. 15 years. The timing aligned too perfectly to be a coincidence. His hands trembled as he enlarged the photo, zooming in on each boy. David's strong jaw, Ethan's guarded stare, Luke's easy smile, Mason's thoughtful gaze. They were his sons. The realization hit like a freight train, splintering the carefully constructed walls of his life. Sir? His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. You're 10 o'clock with the Tokyo investors. Cancel it, James snapped, his voice hoarse. He stood, grabbing his coat, his heart thundering. All of it. Family emergency. His assistant hesitated. Sir, the board... Now! He was already out the door, the glass walls of his office blurring as he strode to the elevator. The descent felt endless, each floor ticking by like a countdown to a truth he wasn't ready to face. Had Aya hidden this from him? 4 children, his children, and she'd never said a word? Anger flared, mingling with guilt. He'd sent money, hadn't he? A few wire transfers to ease his conscience after their breakup. But her calls, her tears, he dismissed them, too consumed by his ambition to listen. What had she said in those final conversations? He couldn't remember, and that scared him. His driver, Marcus, waited curbside, the black Bentley gleaming under the morning sun. Where to, Mr. Thornton? Marcus asked, opening the door. Unity Community Center, James said, sliding into the back seat. South side, hurry. The car wove through rush-hour traffic, the city's pulse matching the chaos in James's mind. Memories flooded back, Aya's voice, breaking with emotion over the phone, begging him to stay. I need you, she'd said. He'd been in London closing his first major deal, the ink still wet on his father's approval. He'd told her the timing was wrong, that he'd come back when his empire was secure, but he hadn't. He'd signed the divorce papers she sent, assuming she'd move on. Had she known she was carrying quadruplets? Had she tried to tell him, and he'd been too blind to hear? The Bentley pulled up to a modest brick building, its sign reading Unity Community Center in faded paint. Children's laughter spilled from an open window, and a vibrant mural of hands linked across a rainbow adorned the wall. James stepped out, his polished shoes stark against the cracked sidewalk. His suit felt like armor, but it couldn't shield him from the weight of what he was about to face. He adjusted his tie, a nervous habit, and approached the entrance, his pulse hammering in his ears. Inside, the center buzzed with activity. Volunteers arranged tables for an event, and the air smelled of fresh paint and coffee. James scanned the room, his eyes locking onto Aya. She moved with purpose, directing a group of teens with a warm, authoritative grace. Her hair was shorter now, brushing her shoulders, and laugh lines framed her eyes, but she was as breathtaking as the day they'd met. She wore a simple navy blouse and jeans, a far cry from the designer gowns of her modeling days, yet she carried herself with a quiet strength that made his chest ache. Before he could approach, a teenage boy stepped into his path, tall, lanky, with a protective stance. David, James guessed, the eldest. Can I help you? The boy asked, his voice steady, his blue eyes narrowing with suspicion. Behind him, 3 others appeared, their gazes equally intense. Ethan's scowl, Luke's curious tilt of the head, Mason's quiet assessment. They were a unit, a wall between James and their mother. I'm looking for Aya Williams, James said, his voice catching. He cleared his throat, forcing calm. It's personal. David crossed his arms. She's busy. Who are you? James opened his mouth, but the words lodged in his throat. I'm your father. He couldn't say it, not yet. The truth felt too raw, too impossible. Before he could respond, Aya's voice cut through the air. David, it's okay. She approached, her steps measured, her eyes locking onto James with a mix of shock and something darker. Anger, perhaps, or pain. James, she whispered, her voice barely audible. The boys exchanged glances, sensing the shift in the air. Aya's composure held, but her hands clenched briefly at her sides, betraying her turmoil. What are you doing here? He swallowed, the weight of 15 years pressing down. I saw the article. About you. About them. His gaze flicked to the boys who stood like sentinels watching every move. Aya, are they? Her eyes flashed, cutting him off. Not here, she said sharply. She turned to the boys, her voice softening but firm. Go help Miss Carter with the banners. I need a moment. David hesitated, his stare lingering on James, but he nodded, leading his brothers away. Their footsteps echoed in the hall, leaving James and Aya alone by the entrance. The mural's colors seemed to pulse behind her, a vivid contrast to the storm brewing between them. Why didn't you tell me? James asked, his voice low, urgent. 4 children, Aya. My children. How could you keep this from me? Her laugh was sharp, bitter, slicing through his accusation. Keep it from you? James, I wrote to you. Dozens of letters. I begged you to come back. You never answered. You made your choice. Letters? He frowned, confusion knotting his brow. I never got any letters. Her eyes searched his, looking for a lie but found only bewilderment. For a moment her resolve faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. But she straightened, her voice steady. You left me, James. You left us. And I did what I had to do. He stepped closer, desperation creeping in. Aya, I didn't know. I swear. If I'd known... Enough, she said, raising a hand. This isn't about you anymore. It's about them. David, Ethan, Luke, Mason. They're my world. And you don't get to walk in after 15 years and demand answers. James stood frozen, the weight of her words crashing over him. The boys' faces lingered in his mind, their blue eyes a mirror of his own. He'd built an empire, but at what cost? As Aya turned to rejoin the event, her silhouette framed by the mural, he knew one thing with shattering clarity. He had to make this right, no matter how long it took. The Unity Community Center pulsed with life, its modest brick facade belying the warmth within. Children darted through the courtyard, their laughter mingling with the hum of volunteers setting up for a youth mentorship event. Aya Williams moved among them, a beacon of calm authority, her navy blouse slightly rumpled from hours of organizing. Her short curls bounced as she directed a group of teens to hang banners, her smile warm but strained. She hadn't slept well, the shock of James Thornton's arrival still reverberating through her. 15 years had passed since he'd walked out, leaving her to raise their quadruplets alone. Now he was here, standing on the cracked sidewalk outside, his tailored suit as out of place as a diamond in a coal mine. James Bentley idled at the curb, its sleek black frame drawing curious glances from passers-by. He stepped out, his polished shoes crunching against the gravel, his heart hammering with a mix of dread and determination. The mural on the center's wall, hands linked across a vibrant rainbow, seemed to mock his isolation. He adjusted his tie, a nervous tick, and scanned the bustling courtyard. Aya was there, radiant despite the years, her presence pulling him like gravity. But before he could cross the threshold, 4 figures blocked his path. David, the eldest, stood at the forefront, his broad shoulders squared, his blue eyes, James's eyes, narrowed with suspicion. Ethan flanked him, his scowl sharp enough to cut glass, while Luke and Mason hung back, their gazes curious but guarded. The quadruplets were a unit, their bond palpable, forged by years of protecting their mother. James froze, the weight of their stares pinning him in place. These were his sons, flesh and blood, yet they looked at him like a stranger. The realization stung deeper than he'd expected. "Who are you?" David asked, his voice low, carrying the weight of a protector. At 16, he was already taller than James, his presence commanding despite his youth. James swallowed, his throat dry. "I need to speak with Aya Williams," he said, forcing his voice to steady. "It's personal." Ethan's scowl deepened, his hands clenching into fists. "She's busy. What do you want with our mom?" The word mom hit James like a punch, a reminder of the life Aya had built without him. He opened his mouth searching for words, but the truth, "I'm your father," felt too raw, too impossible to utter. Luke tilted his head, his expression softer, almost curious, while Mason's quiet gaze seemed to dissect James's every move. The boys were a mirror of Aya and himself, their features a haunting blend of her rich brown skin and his piercing blue eyes. Before James could respond, Aya's voice cut through the tension. "David, it's okay." She stepped forward, her eyes locking onto James with a storm of emotions. Shock, anger, and something deeper, buried beneath years of pain. Her presence silenced the courtyard, volunteers pausing to glance their way. "Kids," she said, her voice firm but gentle, "go help Ms. Carter with the tables. I need a moment." David hesitated, his stare boring into James, but he nodded, signaling his brothers. Ethan shot James a final glare, his resentment palpable, before following. Luke and Mason trailed behind, casting curious glances over their shoulders. Their footsteps faded into the center, leaving James and Aya alone on the porch, the air thick with unspoken history. Aya crossed her arms, her posture a shield. "James," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, his name laced with a bitterness she couldn't hide. "What are you doing here?" He took a step closer, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I saw the article, Aya, about you, about the boys." His voice cracked, betraying the turmoil inside. Are they mine?" Her eyes flashed, a fire igniting behind them. "Yes," she said, the word clipped. Final. "David, Ethan, Luke, Mason, they're yours, but don't you dare act like you have a right to them." The confirmation hit him like a tidal wave, guilt and awe crashing together. He leaned against the porch railing, his legs unsteady. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice raw. "4 children, Aya. My children. How could you keep this from me?" Her laugh was sharp, cutting through the morning air like a blade. "Keep it from you?" She stepped closer, her voice low, venomous. "I wrote to you, James. Dozens of letters. I poured my heart out. Told you about the pregnancy, the quadruplets, every milestone. I sent them to your London office begging you to come back. You never answered. Not once." "Letters?" His brow furrowed, confusion knotting his gut. "Aya, I swear I never got any letters." She studied him, her eyes searching for a lie, but found only genuine bewilderment. For a moment her resolve wavered, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. Had he truly not known? She shook her head, dismissing the thought. "You made your choice, James," she said, her voice steadying. "You walked away. You chose your empire over us. I did what I had to do to protect my boys." Her words landed like blows, each one stripping away the defenses he'd built over 15 years. He remembered her calls, her tearful voicemails, but he'd been in London, consumed by boardroom battles and his father's expectations. He'd sent money thinking it would suffice, assuming she'd exaggerated her situation to trap him. Now the truth loomed undeniable. He'd failed her. Failed them all. "I didn't know," he said, his voice breaking. "Aya, if I'd known there were 4 of them, if I'd known any of it, I would have..." "Would have what?" she challenged, her eyes blazing. "Come back? Been a father? You didn't want 1 child, James. Would 4 have changed your mind?" He flinched, her words slicing through his excuses. She was right. Back then, he'd been 24, ambitious, terrified of anything that threatened his legacy. He'd convinced himself that leaving was best for both of them, that Aya would thrive without him. But standing here, facing her strength, her pain, he saw the cost of his cowardice. "They're incredible," he said softly, glancing toward the center where the boys were setting up tables, their laughter drifting through the open door. "You've done an amazing job." "I had no choice," she replied, her voice softening but still edged with steel. "They're my world. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice. It was for them." Not for you. He nodded, the weight of her words settling into his bones. I want to know them, Aya. I want to make this right. Her expression hardened, her arms tightening across her chest. It's not that simple. They don't know you. They've grown up without a father, and they've managed just fine. You don't get to walk in and claim them because you're suddenly curious. I'm not here to claim them, he said, his voice earnest. I'm here to try, to be whatever they'll let me be. Aya studied him, her gaze piercing, weighing his sincerity against years of betrayal. The courtyard buzzed around them, but they were an island, locked in a moment that could reshape their lives. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders sagging slightly. This isn't about you, James. It's about them. If you want a chance, you'll have to earn it, slowly. And if you hurt them, I swear, I won't, he said quickly, his eyes pleading. I promise. She held his gaze, then turned toward the center, her voice barely audible. We'll see. As she walked away, rejoining the event with a forced smile, James stood rooted to the porch. The boys' laughter echoed, a sound both foreign and achingly familiar. He'd built an empire, but it paled against the family he'd unknowingly left behind. The path to redemption stretched before him, steep and uncertain, but for the first time in 15 years, he felt a purpose beyond wealth. He had to try, for Aya, for his sons, for the man he might still become. The Unity Community Center's courtyard glowed under strings of fairy lights, the mentorship event now winding down as volunteers cleared tables and children scampered home. Aya Williams stood by the mural, her arms crossed, the weight of James Thornton's reappearance pressing against her chest. His words echoed in her mind. I want to know them. I want to make this right. She wanted to believe him, for her son's sake. But 15 years of silence screamed louder than his promises. The boys, David, Ethan, Luke, and Mason, were her world, and she'd shield them from any more pain, even if it came dressed in a tailored suit and blue eyes that mirrored their own. Inside the quadruplets stacked chairs, their banter a comforting rhythm. David, ever the leader, directed traffic while Luke hummed a tune, his fingers tapping an imaginary guitar. Mason methodically organized supplies, and Ethan, the quiet storm, worked in silence, his scowl deepening whenever James's name surfaced. Aya watched them, her heart swelling with pride but aching with the choice she faced. Could she let James back in, even a little? She'd agreed to a dinner at their home, a tentative step to let him meet the boys properly, but doubt gnawed at her. What if he left again? James lingered by his Bentley, the city's hum a distant pulse compared to the chaos in his heart. He'd seen the boys' faces, their strength, their bond, and it humbled him. He'd built skyscrapers, but Aya had raised 4 remarkable humans alone. His phone buzzed, his assistant no doubt with rescheduled board meetings. But he ignored it. For the first time in years, his empire felt irrelevant. He approached Aya, his steps hesitant. Thank you, he said, his voice low, for letting me try. She met his gaze, her expression guarded. This is for them, James, not you. Tomorrow's at 6 o'clock. Don't be late. He nodded, a flicker of hope igniting. I won't, I promise. As he drove away, the city lights blurring past, he clung to the image of his sons, determined to prove he could be more than a ghost from their past. At home, Aya's modest apartment buzzed with the boys' energy. The South Side building was worn but warm, its walls adorned with their artwork and photos. First steps, soccer games, school plays. She gathered them in the living room, the scent of her homemade chili lingering from dinner. We need to talk, she said, sitting on the faded couch. About James. David leaned forward, his blue eyes steady. He's our dad, isn't he? That's why he was here. Aya nodded, her throat tight. Yes, I didn't know he'd come back. He wants to meet you properly. I invited him for dinner tomorrow. Luke's face lit up. Cool. Does he, own a jet or something? Mason, tinkering with a broken radio, glanced up. Does he even know us? Like what we're into? Ethan, slouched in the corner, erupted. Why are we even doing this? He left us, Mom. He didn't care then, and he doesn't now. His voice cracked, raw with a pain he rarely showed. Aya reached for him, but he pulled away, storming to his room. The door slammed, echoing like a gunshot. David sighed. "He's just mad, Mom. He'll come around." "I hope so," Aya whispered, her heart fracturing. She spent the night tossing, Ethan's words haunting her. Was she betraying him by letting James in? By morning, she was resolved to go through with the dinner, but Ethan's silence at breakfast, his eyes red, his jaw set, unraveled her. As the boys left for school, he grabbed her arm. "Don't do this, Mom. He'll hurt you again. He'll hurt us." "Ethan, baby," she said, cupping his face. "I'm doing this for you. All of you. You deserve to know who he is, even if it's just to decide he's not worth your time." He shook his head, tears brimming. "I don't need him. We don't." He bolted out, leaving Aya trembling. By afternoon, her resolve crumbled. She texted James, "Dinner's off. We're not ready." She stared at the phone, half expecting a reply, but none came. Maybe he'd given up already. That evening, James sat alone at a candlelit table in a high-end Loop restaurant, the place he'd hoped to bring Aya and the boys. The empty chairs mocked him, Aya's text burning in his mind. He'd pushed too hard, too fast. He ordered a scotch, the amber liquid doing little to dull the ache. He was about to leave when fate intervened. Aya, dressed in a black server's uniform, approached his table, her tray balanced with practiced ease. Her eyes widened, the shock mutual. "James!" she breathed, nearly dropping the tray. The restaurant hummed around them, oblivious to the collision of their pasts. "Aya," he said, standing, his voice soft. "You work here?" She nodded, regaining her composure. "Bills don't pay themselves." She poured his water, her hands steady despite the tremor in her heart. "What are you doing here?" "I was hoping for dinner with you and the boys." He hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry if I pushed too hard." She glanced around, ensuring her manager wasn't watching. "It's not you. It's Ethan. He's not ready. He's angry, and I can't force him." James nodded, his eyes searching hers. "Tell me about them, Aya. Please. I want to know who they are." She hesitated, the weight of years between them. But something in his gaze, genuine, raw, cracked her defenses. Between serving tables, she stole moments to talk, her voice low, intimate. "David's the rock, always looking out for his brothers. He's captain of the debate team, wants to be a lawyer. Ethan's fierce, loyal to a fault, but he feels everything deeply. He writes poetry, though he'd never admit it. Luke's our musician, always humming, teaching himself guitar. Mason's the fixer, cars, radios, anything broken. He's got your knack for solving problems." James listened, hanging on every word, the boys coming alive in his mind. "They sound incredible," he said, his voice thick. "You've given them everything." "I had to," she said, her eyes glistening. "But it wasn't easy. Not without you." The words hung heavy, a bridge to a past neither could erase. Before he could respond, her manager called her away. "I have to go," she said, but paused. "James, don't give up on them, but go slow." He nodded, a spark of hope rekindling. "I will. For them. For you." As she disappeared into the kitchen, James left a generous tip and stepped into the night, the city's pulse sinking with his resolve. He'd lost the dinner, but this chance encounter felt like a lifeline. The boys' faces, David's strength, Ethan's fire, Luke's light, Mason's quiet genius, burned in his mind. He didn't know how, but he'd earned their trust, and Aya's. Back home, Aya tucked the boys into bed, Ethan's silence louder than ever. She sat by his side, brushing his curls. "I love you," she whispered, "always." He didn't reply, but his hand squeezed hers, a small surrender. As she turned off the light, she felt James's presence lingering, a question she wasn't ready to answer. The path ahead was fraught, but for her boys, she'd face anything, even the man who'd broken her heart. The Chicago dawn painted the sky in hues of amber and gray, but James Thornton found no peace in its beauty. He stood in his penthouse, the city sprawling below like a map of his conquests, yet his mind was tethered to the Unity Community Center, to Aya Williams, and to the 4 sons he'd only just discovered. David, Ethan, Luke, and Mason. Their names echoed in his thoughts, each one a reminder of the life he'd unknowingly abandoned. Aya's words from their chance encounter at the restaurant haunted him. I sent dozens of letters. You never answered. The claim gnawed at him, a puzzle with missing pieces. He'd never seen those letters, but her conviction was unshakable. Something didn't add up. James paced the sleek hardwood floor, his reflection flickering in the glass walls. The memory of Aya, poised yet weary in her server's uniform, stirred a guilt he couldn't shake. She'd raised their boys alone, while he'd built an empire, oblivious to their existence. But why hadn't her letters reached him? He'd been in London 15 years ago, drowning in boardroom battles, his life a blur of deals and deadlines. Had his staff misplaced them? Or was there something darker at play? He stopped, his gaze settling on a framed photo of his mother, Eleanor Thornton, her regal smile masking a will of iron. A chill ran through him. Eleanor had always guarded the family legacy with ruthless precision. Could she have? He grabbed his coat and keys, the decision made before he could second-guess it. The drive to his mother's Gold Coast mansion was a blur, the city's morning traffic fading against the storm in his mind. The Thornton estate loomed like a fortress, its ivy-covered walls a testament to old money and older secrets. Eleanor greeted him in the drawing room, her silver hair impeccable, her silk blouse pristine. James, darling, she said, her smile practiced. To what do I owe this early visit? He didn't sit, his hands clenched at his sides. Aya Williams, he said, his voice low, controlled. Did you know she wrote to me? Letters, dozens of them, when she was pregnant. Letters I never saw. Eleanor's expression didn't falter, but her eyes flickered, a tell James knew too well. Aya Williams? That model you were entangled with? She waved a hand dismissively. That was ages ago. Why bring it up now? Because she was carrying my children, he said, his voice rising. Quadruplets, my sons. And she says she told me, but I never got those letters. Did you have anything to do with that? For a moment, silence hung heavy, the grandfather clocks ticking deafening. Then Eleanor sighed, her composure cracking. You were young, James, on the cusp of greatness. Your father's legacy was at stake. That girl, she was a distraction, a risk to everything we'd built. His blood ran cold. What did you do? She rose, moving to a locked cabinet in the corner. With deliberate calm, she retrieved a small, ornate box and placed it on the table. I protected you, she said, opening it to reveal stacks of envelopes, yellowed with age, each addressed to James in Aya's elegant script. Her letters arrived at your London office. I had your assistant forward them to me. You were too busy to be burdened. James's knees buckled and he sank into a chair, his hands trembling as he reached for the box. The envelopes were unopened, their seals intact, a time capsule of Aya's desperation and hope. He opened one, his fingers clumsy, and read, James, I'm carrying 4 babies. Your babies. They're due in July. Please come back. We need you. His vision blurred, tears he hadn't shed in years burning his eyes. You stole them from me, he whispered. My family. Eleanor's voice hardened. I did what was necessary. You were destined for more than diapers and domesticity. Look at you now, a titan. Would you have that if you'd stayed? He stood, towering over her, his voice a low growl. You had no right. You robbed me of my sons, of 15 years I can never get back. And Aya, she went through hell because of you. Eleanor flinched but held her ground. I did it for you, James, for the Thornton name. No, he said, clutching the box. You did it for yourself. He stormed out, the slam of the door echoing like a gunshot. In his car, he clutched the letters, each one a wound, a chance lost. He had to make this right, starting with Aya and his boys. At the Unity Community Center, Aya was knee-deep in a Saturday workshop, teaching teens resume skills. The boys were there too, David mentoring younger kids, Luke strumming a borrowed guitar, Mason fixing a wobbly table, and Ethan sketching in a corner, his mood as stormy as ever. Aya's heart ached for him, his resentment toward James a mirror of her own buried pain. She hadn't seen James since the restaurant, and part of her hoped he'd given up. But another part, the part that remembered his gentle questions about the boys, wondered if he'd stay. James arrived unannounced, the box of letters tucked under his arm. The center buzzed with activity, but his presence drew eyes, his suit stark against the casual chaos. Aya spotted him and froze, her clipboard slipping slightly. "James," she said, approaching warily. "What's this?" He set the box on a table, his voice raw. "Your letters. I found them. My mother intercepted them. I never knew, Aya. I swear." Her breath caught, her eyes darting to the envelopes. She picked one up, recognizing her handwriting. The ink faded, but the pain was fresh. "All this time," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought you ignored me, that you didn't care." "I did care," he said, his eyes pleading. "I was a fool, caught up in my world, but I never knew about the boys. If I had—" He trailed off, the weight of what-ifs crushing him. Aya's hands trembled, anger and relief warring within her. "You should have been there, James. Letters or not, you chose to leave." "I know," he said, his voice thick. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. To them." Before she could respond, Ethan appeared, his sketchbook falling to the floor. "What's he doing here?" he demanded, his glare cutting through James. David, Luke, and Mason joined him, their protective wall reforming. "Ethan," Aya said, her voice steadying, "James found something. The letters I sent him years ago. He didn't get them." Ethan's eyes flicked to the box, then back to James, his jaw tight. "So what? That changes nothing." He still left. James stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "You're right. I left, and I was wrong. But I'm here now, Ethan. I want to know you. All of you. I'm not going anywhere." Ethan's fists clenched, his voice a hiss. "We don't need you." He stormed out, the door slamming behind him. David moved to follow, but Aya shook her head. "Let him go," she said, her eyes still on James. "He needs time." James nodded, his heart heavy. "What can I do, Aya? Tell me how to start." She studied him, the letters a bridge between their past and an uncertain future. "Show up," she said finally. "Not with money or promises. Be here. For them. Earn their trust." He agreed, determination settling in his bones. That afternoon, he volunteered at the center, coaching basketball with David, jamming with Luke, and helping Mason fix a broken chair. The boys were wary, but David's nod and Luke's shy grin hinted at a crack in their defenses. Ethan stayed away, but James felt a spark of hope. The letters had unveiled a truth that changed everything. Now he had to prove he was worthy of the family he'd lost. The late September sun dipped low over Chicago, casting a golden glow across the South Side neighborhood where Aya Williams's modest apartment stood. Inside, the air buzzed with anticipation as David, Ethan, Luke, and Mason prepared for their 16th birthday. The living room was a riot of color, streamers taped crookedly to the walls, a homemade banner proclaiming Happy 16th. Swaying above the couch, Aya bustled in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour as she frosted a towering chocolate cake, her heart a tangle of hope and apprehension. James Thornton was coming tonight, his first real invitation into their home since his return. The weight of it pressed against her, a fragile bridge between past betrayals and a future she couldn't yet trust. James stood outside, clutching 4 carefully wrapped gifts, his tailored jacket swapped for a simple sweater to blend into the neighborhood's rhythm. The box of Aya's letters, uncovered in his mother's study, still burned in his memory, each one a testament to her strength and his failure. He'd spent weeks at the Unity Community Center, coaching basketball, tuning guitars, fixing broken shelves, trying to chip away at the wall his sons had built. David's cautious respect, Luke's shy smiles, and Mason's quiet nods were small victories, but Ethan's resentment remained a fortress, his glares a reminder of the years James could never reclaim. Tonight, their birthday, was his chance to show he was here to stay. Aya opened the door, her eyes wary but softened by the occasion. "You're early," she said, stepping aside. Her jeans and faded t-shirt were a far cry from the runway gowns of her past, yet she carried herself with a grace that stole James's breath. "Couldn't risk being late," he said, offering a hesitant smile. He held up the gifts. "For the boys. I hope I got it right." She nodded, gesturing to the living room. They're waiting. Go easy, James. Ethan's still raw. The quadruplets lounged on the couch, their blue eyes, his eyes, tracking him as he entered. David sat upright, ever the leader, while Luke strummed an imaginary chord, his foot tapping. Mason tinkered with a model car, and Ethan slouched, his arms crossed, his gaze a storm cloud. The room felt charged, like the air before a lightning strike. "Happy birthday," James said, his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. He set the gifts on the coffee table, each wrapped in simple blue paper. "I thought maybe you'd like these." Luke's curiosity won out first. "Presents? Sweet." He reached for one, but David's hand on his shoulder stopped him. "What's the catch?" David asked, his tone even but probing. "You think gifts make up for 15 years? James met his gaze, unflinching. "No catch. And no, they don't make up for anything. I'm here because I want to know you, all of you. These are just a start." Aya leaned against the doorway, watching, her heart caught between hope and fear. James handed a gift to each boy, his hand steady but his pulse racing. "David," he said, passing the first, "a leadership journal for your debate team strategies. I read you're aiming for nationals." David's eyebrows rose, a flicker of surprise softening his guard as he unwrapped the leather-bound book. "Luke," James continued, "a set of guitar picks and a songwriting notebook. Aya mentioned you're teaching yourself chords." Luke's grin was instant, his fingers tracing the pick's smooth edges. "Mason, a precision toolkit for your projects. I saw you fix that table at the center. Impressive." Mason's quiet nod held a hint of warmth, his fingers already itching to test the tools. Finally, James turned to Ethan, whose scowl hadn't budged. "Ethan," he said softly, "a poetry journal. Your mom said you write, even if you don't share it. I thought, maybe this could be a place for your words." Ethan stared at the gift, his jaw tight, but didn't reach for it. The room held its breath. Aya stepped forward, her voice gentle. "Boys, let's eat. Cake's ready." The distraction broke the tension, and they gathered around the dining table, the cake's candles casting a warm glow. As Aya lit them, James stood back, an outsider peering into a family he longed to join. The boys sang off key, their laughter filling the small space, and Aya's smile was a beacon, grounding them all. After the candles were blown out, Ethan pushed back his chair, his untouched gift still on the table. "Why now?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the chatter. All eyes turned to him, the room falling silent. "You show up with presents, acting like you care. Where were you when Mom worked 2 jobs, when we had nothing?" James's heart sank, but he held Ethan's gaze. "I was wrong, Ethan," he said, his voice raw. "I left because I was selfish, scared, chasing things that didn't matter. I didn't know about you, because my mother hid your mom's letters. But that's no excuse. I'm here now, and I'm not leaving." Ethan's eyes glistened, his fist clenched. "You don't get to just fix it. You don't get to be our dad." He grabbed the journal and bolted for the door, slamming it behind him. The sound reverberated, a wound laid bare. "Ethan!" Aya called, starting after him, but David caught her arm. "Let him go, Mom," he said quietly. "He needs space." James stood frozen, the weight of Ethan's pain crushing him. He turned to Aya, his voice low. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's not your fault," she said, though her eyes were heavy. "He's hurting. He's always felt your absence the most." David picked up his journal, flipping through its pages. "You looked into us," he said, his tone less guarded. "That's something." Luke nodded, clutching his picks. "Yeah, these are legit. Thanks." Mason, ever practical, was already inspecting his tools. "These are high-end. Appreciate it." Their small gestures of acceptance were lifelines, but Ethan's absence loomed large. Aya sliced the cake, her hands steady despite the turmoil inside. "Sit, James," she said, passing him a plate. "You're here. That's a start." As they ate, the boys shared stories. David's debate wins, Luke's latest song, Mason's car engine fix. James listened, soaking in their voices, their quirks, and their resilience. Aya watched, her heart softening at his genuine interest. He wasn't the man who'd left her, not entirely. James asked questions, laughed at Luke's jokes, and nodded at Mason's technical talk. But Ethan's empty chair was a silent accusation. Later, as the boys cleared the table, James helped Aya in the kitchen, the clinking of dishes a quiet rhythm. "I messed up tonight," he said, drying a plate. "I pushed too hard." She handed him another dish, her voice soft. "You showed up. That's more than you did for 15 years. Ethan's tough, but he's not unreachable. Keep trying." He nodded, determination settling in. "I will. For all of them. For you." She met his gaze, a flicker of the old connection sparking, then looked away. "Just don't break their hearts again." As James left, the night air cool against his skin, he glanced back at the apartment's glowing windows. Ethan's journal lay heavy in his memory, a challenge unmet. He'd return to the center tomorrow, and the next day, and every day after. The gifts were a gesture, but trust was the real prize, and he'd fight for it, one step at a time. The October chill settled over Chicago, leaves swirling across the South Side streets as Aya Williams locked the Unity Community Center's doors after a long Saturday. Her breath fogged in the crisp air, her mind heavy with the events of the past month. James Thornton's return had upended her carefully guarded world, his presence a constant pull between hope and caution. The boy's 16th birthday had been a turning point. His thoughtful gifts had cracked the defenses of David, Luke, and Mason, but Ethan's flight from the celebration lingered like a bruise. Aya glanced at the center's mural, its vibrant hands a reminder of the community she'd built for her sons. Could James, after 15 years of absence, become part of it? Inside her apartment, the boys sprawled across the living room, their homework scattered on the coffee table. David debated strategy with his debate team over a video call. Luke strummed his guitar, Mason tinkered with a circuit board, and Ethan sketched in his poetry journal, the one James had given him. Aya watched him, her heart aching. He'd kept the journal, though he'd never admit it, and she'd caught him writing in it late at night. His anger toward James was a fortress, but cracks were forming, and Aya wasn't sure whether to widen them or protect her son's heart. James, meanwhile, was rewriting his life around the family he'd lost. His penthouse office, once his sanctuary, now felt sterile, its glass walls reflecting a man he barely recognized. He'd delegated board meetings, rerouted business trips, and spent his days at the community center, determined to earn his son's trust. He coached David's basketball team, marveling at his leadership, jammed with Luke, their shared love of music a quiet bridge, and worked alongside Mason, their hands greasy from fixing old engines. Ethan remained elusive, often leaving when James arrived, his silence a challenge James refused to back down from. Today, James arrived at the center early, his arms full of sports equipment he'd donated. The gymnasium buzzed with kids, and David greeted him with a nod, a small but seismic shift from his initial wariness. "New hoops look good," David said, tossing a basketball. "Want to shoot?" James grinned, shedding his jacket. "You're on." The game was fast, sweaty, and filled with laughter, David's competitive streak mirroring James's own. When David sank a three-pointer, James clapped, pride swelling in his chest. "You're a natural," he said, and David's half-smile was a victory. Luke approached next, his guitar slung over his shoulder. "Got a sec?" he asked, shy but eager. They found a quiet corner, and Luke played a chord progression he'd been working on. James suggested a bridge, humming a melody, and Luke's eyes lit up. "That's dope," he said, scribbling notes. The moment felt fragile, precious, a thread weaving them closer. Mason was in the workshop, repairing a donated computer. James joined him, passing tools without being asked, their silence comfortable. "You're good at this," James said, watching Mason rewire a circuit. Mason shrugged, but his lips twitched. "Runs in the family, I guess." The admission, small as it was, hit James like a wave. Ethan, however, was a shadow. He lingered at the edge of the gym, his sketchbook clutched tight, watching James with a mix of curiosity and defiance. When James caught his eye, Ethan turned away, heading for the exit. James's heart sank, but Aya's words echoed, "Keep trying." He followed, keeping his distance, and found Ethan on the courtyard bench, sketching furiously. "Mind if I sit?" James asked, his voice gentle. Ethan didn't look up, but didn't say no. James sat, leaving space between them. Your mom says you're a poet. That's powerful. Ethan's pencil paused, his jaw tight. What do you care? I care because it's you, James said, honest but careful. I know I don't deserve your trust, Ethan. I messed up, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Ethan's eyes flicked to him, searching for a lie. Finding none, he resumed sketching, but slower, as if weighing James's words. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. Aya observed from the center's window, her heart a battlefield. James's efforts were undeniable. He showed up, listened, and learned the boys' worlds. At home, she found herself softening, their conversations at the center growing longer, more personal. One evening, as they cleaned up after a workshop, James lingered, his sleeves rolled up, a smudge of paint on his cheek. They're amazing, Aya, he said, his voice warm. David's a leader, Luke's a dreamer, Mason's a genius, Ethan's deep. You've given them everything. Her throat tightened. I had to, but it's good. Seeing you try. Their eyes met, a spark of the old connection flaring, then fading as she turned away. The past still lingered, a ghost between them, but trouble loomed. Eleanor Thornton, James's mother, had caught wind of his visits to the South Side. She cornered him at a family dinner, her voice icy. You're throwing away your legacy for that woman and her children, she said, her disdain palpable. They're not your responsibility. They're my sons, James snapped, his anger flaring. And Aya's worth more than your empire ever will. You hid her letters. You lied to me for 15 years. Eleanor's face hardened. I protected you. You'll regret this, James. He walked out, her words fueling his resolve. He doubled his efforts, attending David's debate matches, cheering Luke's school talent show, and helping Mason rebuild a junkyard car. Ethan began staying longer at the center, watching from the sidelines, his journal always close. One day, James found a poem slipped under the workshop door. Ethan's raw and angry, about a father who wasn't there. James read it, tears pricking his eyes, and tucked it away, a map to his son's heart. Aya noticed the change in her boys. David spoke of James with cautious respect. Luke hummed tunes they'd written together, and Mason showed off tools James had bought. Even Ethan, though silent, carried the journal everywhere. One night, as Aya and James washed dishes after a center event, she spoke, her voice soft. They're starting to trust you, especially Ethan, even if he won't say it. James paused, his hand still in the soapy water. And you? Do you trust me? She met his gaze, her heart racing. I'm trying, but it's hard, James. You broke me once. I know, he said, his voice thick. I'll prove I'm different. For you. For them. Their fingers brushed under the water, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through her. She pulled back, but the moment lingered, a promise of something neither could name. Outside, the boys played basketball, their laughter echoing. Ethan joined them, his movements hesitant but present, and James watched, hope blooming in his chest. As they locked up the center, Aya glanced at James, his silhouette framed by the mural. Keep showing up, she said, echoing her earlier advice. That's what they need. He nodded, his eyes on the boys. I will. Always. The path was steep, but each step, each game, each song, each poem, built a bridge to the family he'd almost lost. Ethan's guarded glances, Aya's softening smiles, were beacons guiding him forward, toward a future worth fighting for. The Chicago skyline glowed under a late September sunset, its golden hues reflecting off the sprawling windows of James Thornton's Lincoln Park mansion. A year had passed since he'd stumbled upon Aya Williams and their quadruplet sons, David, Ethan, Luke, and Mason, in a news article that shattered his world. Now the mansion, once a sterile monument to his wealth, thrummed with life. Laughter echoed from the backyard, where the boys played an impromptu basketball game, their shouts mingling with the rustle of autumn leaves. Aya stood on the patio, her arms wrapped around herself, a soft smile playing on her lips. James joined her, his heart swelling at the sight of their family, a dream he'd nearly lost forever. The past year had been a crucible, forging bonds from the ashes of 15 years apart. Aya and the boys had moved into the mansion 6 months ago, a leap of faith after countless dinners, center workshops, and quiet moments that rebuilt trust. The transition wasn't seamless. Ethan's lingering doubts, Aya's guarded heart, and Eleanor Thornton's disapproval cast shadows, but James had proven himself, step by steadfast step. He'd stepped back from his real estate empire, delegating to focus on coaching David's debate team, jamming with Luke, rebuilding cars with Mason, and reading Ethan's poetry late into the night. Aya, no longer a server, now led a mentorship program at Unity Community Center, her vision funded by James but driven by her passion. Inside, the mansion's warmth contrasted with its former cold grandeur. The walls, once bare, now boasted the boys' artwork, photos, and trophies. David's debate medals, Luke's music awards, Mason's engineering projects, and Ethan's framed poems. Tonight, the family gathered for a barbecue, a celebration of their new rhythm. James manned the grill, his apron comically splattered, while Aya tossed a salad, her laughter bright as she dodged Luke's playful swipes at the bowl. The boys set the table, their banter a symphony of connection. David, now 17 and eyeing law school, clapped James on the shoulder. "Nice grill skills, Dad. Didn't burn the burgers this time." The word dad, once unthinkable, rolled off his tongue with ease, a testament to months of shared moments. Luke, strumming an air guitar, grinned. "Yeah, but he's still got to work on his playlist. Classic rock? Really?" James chuckled, flipping a burger. "Give me a break, kid. Your indie stuff sounds like a cat on a keyboard." Mason, tinkering with a solar-powered lantern, smirked. "At least he fixed the patio lights. Took him 3 tries, but who's counting?" Ethan, quieter but present, set out plates, his poetry journal tucked under his arm. He'd begun sharing his work with James, each poem a window into his healing heart. "Food's ready, right?" he asked, his tone lighter than it had been a year ago. Aya caught James's eye across the chaos, her smile a silent acknowledgement of how far they'd come. Their relationship, rekindled not as the young lovers they'd been, but as partners united by their sons, had deepened into something new. They'd faced challenges. Eleanor's attempts to sabotage James's commitment, Ethan's initial resistance, Aya's fear of being hurt again, but love had prevailed, steady and real. The dinner was a feast of burgers, ribs, and Aya's famous cornbread, the table alive with stories. David recounted a debate win, Luke pitched a song for the center's fundraiser, Mason explained his latest gadget, and Ethan hesitantly shared a poem about roots and redemption. James listened, his heart full, marveling at the boys' brilliance and Aya's strength. She'd given them a foundation he could only hope to build upon. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Aya rose, clinking her glass. "A toast," she said, her voice warm. "To us, to family, to second chances, to choosing love every day." The boys raised their sodas, chorusing, "To family," Ethan added softly, "and to Dad for coming back." The words hit James like a tide, his throat tightening as he met Ethan's gaze, now free of its old storm. Later, as the boys cleared the table, James and Aya slipped to the balcony, the city's lights twinkling below. He took her hand, his thumb tracing her knuckles. "I thought I'd lost you forever," he murmured, his voice thick. "You and the boys, you're my everything." Aya leaned into him, her eyes reflecting the sunset. "We found our way, James. For them. For us." Her voice softened. "I was so angry for so long, but watching you with the boys, seeing you choose them every day, it's healed something in me." He cupped her face, his heart racing. "I love you, Aya. I never stopped, even when I was too foolish to know it." She smiled, tears glistening. "I love you too. Not the billionaire, not the past. Just you, here, now." Their kiss was gentle, a promise sealed under the fading light, interrupted by a cheer from the backyard. The boys, spying from the court, erupted in mock disgust. "Gross!" Luke yelled, laughing. David grinned. "About time." Mason shook his head, and Ethan, beaming, tossed a basketball. "Get a room!" Aya laughed, pulling James back to the game. They joined the boys, the court alive with shouts and laughter. James guarded Ethan, who faked, left, and scored, his grin triumphant. "You're slow, Dad," he teased, and James's heart soared at the word, now a gift freely given. As night fell, the family gathered inside. The boys sprawled on the couch, Aya curled against James. They watched a movie, the room filled with their chatter, a tapestry of love woven from broken threads. James looked around, the emptiness that once haunted him gone, replaced by a warmth no wealth could buy. Outside, Eleanor Thornton's influence lingered, her disapproval a distant threat, but James had cut ties, choosing his family over her legacy. The center's mentorship program thrived, Aya's vision a beacon for the community, and the boys, now college-bound, carried their parents' resilience. David aimed for Yale, Luke for Berkeley, Mason for MIT, and Ethan for NYU, each path a testament to their strength. In the quiet, James squeezed Aya's hand. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me this." She nestled closer. "We're in this together, always." The movie's credits rolled, but no one moved, the moment too perfect to break. Outside, Chicago pulsed, but here, in this home, time paused, holding a family reborn. James, once a king of empires, had found his true kingdom, not in gold, but in the laughter of his sons, the love of Aya, and the life they'd built, one choice at a time. Thank you for joining Aya and James's journey of redemption and love. Has their story touched your heart? Do you believe in second chances for broken families? Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear them. Your support means the world, and we're grateful for every moment you've spent with us. Stay tuned for more tales of forgiveness and connection with Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips. Until next time, keep choosing love.